A statue of Lemmy Kilmister was unveiled last night at the Rainbow Bar and Grill. The Los Angeles bar's outdoor patio has now been dubbed Lemmy's Lounge.
I just want to welcome everybody here. This is truly an event from the fans. Thank Michael, the Magdaleries here for putting this on and honoring Lemmy.
We're here for a very special night. We're showing tribute to one of our dear friends.
All right, let's open up this statue. Lemmy is always here, and now Lemmy is permanently here, not going anywhere.
He's at home here, and they've enshrined it. And this, to me, is going to be basically rock and roll mecca. Everybody from rock and roll's got to come here one time in their life and pay homage.
I've seen a few things in this place you would not believe. I didn't believe in myself at the time. I had to be pinched to make sure I wasn't dreaming. And I've done a few things in here too. There's all kinds of stories. You talk to 10 different people, they'll have 10 different stories, you know, and how they feel about the place. I love it, you know. Listen, this should be a protected building. This should be a revered monument. The history of rock and roll is in here.
All right, we are Motorhead, and we are going to kick your ass.
It was like a party every night. It was crazy.
It was absolutely insane. I've never seen anything like that.
If you were cool, you could get away with anything. I used to get away with murder in there.
I've seen musicians getting hit under the table, shit like that. I said, do what the fuck you want, I don't care.
It was Bacchanalia.
It was exactly how you picture it, times 10.
It was the place to be.
It was the rock and roll cafe.
I was here every single night hanging out. All of us were.
You see everybody here.
Slash, Ozzy, Lemmy,
John Bonham,
Motley Crue,
Keith Moon,
Van Halen,
with Jimmy Page,
Janis Joplin,
Jimi Hendrix.
the list goes on and on and on.
It was different then.
There was a culture, a glamorous culture, the likes of which will not happen again. And the watering hole of all of it,
the one great hub.
the only rock mecca.
the Church of Rock and Roll, the Rainbow. The rainbow somehow was sort of when the planets line up. A special place at a special time. Didn't happen in the valley, didn't happen on Ventura Boulevard, it didn't happen in Iowa or Wyoming. It happened in Los Angeles. Perfect weather, and up the hills, everybody lived there. They all came from all over the world. And at night, they would all come down and celebrate life. Anything was possible.
My name is Mario Maglieri, Sr., and I've been here 42 years. I fed more musicians than I could stick at.
My grandpa had a restaurant back in Chicago.
You know what? I had rock and roll in my bar in Chicago before you ever heard of rock and roll.
Lots of people have been critical of rock and roll for a long time, but if I may say so, I think for the wrong reason, because they thought it was bad music. Well, actually, it is worse than that. As here used, it is a cynical, commercial exploitation of the emotions of children. Rock and roll music in the United States is dying.
One of his partners from the restaurant, Elmer, was going to open a business out here.
Elmer Valentine, he saw the whiskey in France, and he brought it to America.
He went to Europe and in France saw a club called Whiskey A Go-Go that had these girls standing behind the bar on a ledge dancing. And that's where he came with the concept of the Go-Go Girls. So he opened the club January 16th, 1964.
When I went there, about less than 2 months after the opening, I couldn't run it. They were robbing them blind.
Elmer had called my dad and said, come in and straighten this out.
I said, yeah, I'll come down there. $200 a week, a lot of money.
My father came in to reorganize the business and run the business.
I fired everybody in the place, got all new help, and I straightened it out. It became successful the way it is. We had, I think, 3 cages with girls dancing on the stage, and we had more movie stars in there you could actually count. Packed house every night, like a hangout.
Here he is with a song called Going to a Go-Go, Smokey Robinson and the Miracles.
We were the first club to integrate, that we bought black acting.
Los Angeles, they didn't want blacks on the street, so I fucked them all. I brought them all for the whole year.
Smokey Robinson, Martha Reeves, The Temptation, The Tops.
You name them, I had them. It's color. A human being, God put us all here for a reason. I don't care what color you are.
Did you get much backlash because of that?
I don't give a shit.
And the visitor to Hollywood soon discovers that this small town has a wealth of entertainment, but much more.
My grandpa moved out to be a manager at first, and eventually over time started buying into the business. His whole family at that point moved out here, and everyone, was living in LA.
I was 16 years old when I started at the Whiskey Go-Go.
He was a busboy god in the 60s at the Whiskey.
I was a kid. He did not want me there, and I insisted that he bring me in there, that I wanted to come in and work there. I would come in and work maybe 5-6 nights a week, and I was still going to high school and then college, but on my nights off, I wasn't allowed to go in there. He did not want me in the environment. It was an era of peace and love and free drugs, and he just didn't want me to become part of all that. He thought I'd fall prey, so to speak, of what was going on around me. I personally had a ball. My father ran the business as far as the nightclub ended. The booking was done by Elmer.
Johnny Rivers was there for a year. And then after the rock and roll started, then we started with rock and roll.
The Doors started as the house band. We're paying them like $50 a week, a case of beer a night, whatever, just to keep them entertained. How the Doors got booked in the Whiskey to begin with was Chris Gowdy worked in our office as a bookkeeper, and Charlotte, who was a ticket taker at the front door, went to a club called the London Fog. They saw Jim, and they wanted to screw Jim. That's why they got hired.
The Doors opening for Johnny Rivers and getting booed off the stage.
Try now, we can only lose, and our love become a funeral pyre. Come on, baby, light my fire. Come on, baby.
They learned their trade. They came in and rehearsed all day. That Light My Fire song that became 12.5 minutes, I heard that for 2.5 hours at a time. By the time that it came out on the radio and became famous, I was like, oh my God, do I have to hear this again?
Mother, I want to fuck you all night, baby. Come on, baby. Turn this fucking ass.
Actually, when I met Oliver Stone, this is years later, after he did the movie The Doors, I had to correct him.
Hey, come on, man. All right, man. Here's all right, right there.
My father did not throw Jim out. Jim had a habit of kind of dropping his pants. Now, I know today they wear their pants below their ass. In those days, you didn't do that. The girls would go crazy in the audience. And one night in particular, and this is where the movie got it misinterpreted, is he decided to do a frontal nudity and kind of showed his works on stage. My father got so ticked off that he pulled the plug. Jim jumped off the stage onto the dance floor, went down the steps of the dance floor, went up on the second landing, and peed over the balcony. literally like to say, screw you, back to my dad for unplugging him. Went up in the dressing room and hid. And then at 2 a.m, he came down and apologized to my dad, and they were back on stage the next night.
Jim Morris has too many drugs. He was not a bad kid. He was a good kid. Like I tell him, hey, I call him names. You get on that stage at 9 o'clock, not 5, not 9, 5 after, you're not, I'll beat the shit out of you.
The Whiskey was the place where the happening acts were happening.
If you come out to LA as a band, you really want that on your resume, that you've played at the Whiskey A Go-Go. I mean, it's a big thing.
My dad was 17, 18 years old working in these clubs, and it's mind-blowing the people he had to have come across.
At the time, you're not aware of what's going on around you. I'm hanging out with Jimi Hendrix and Arthur Lee from Love.
I mean, just to be sitting at the Whiskey and have someone from the Beatles or have an Andy Warhol sitting in there, I mean, that's just, it's unbelievable.
And I was the busboy for probably 6, 8 months, and then I was a manager when my dad wanted to take a night off. He worked into bartending. I learned the business from the ground up. Out of college, law school, and everything else I did, the best education I had was right here on the Sunset Strip. Janis Joplin came in, and her name is Pearl, by the way. Janis was her stage name. And she sat down in the middle booth of the Whiskey. She had like 4 glasses of Southern Comfort on the rocks. And on about her 4th one, my dad said, put a case of Southern Comfort into Pearl's trunk. She leaves with her manager. The next morning on the news, they said that Janis Joplin had died of alcohol poisoning. I thought, well, the booze I gave her, I must have killed her. She had all those drinks, and I mean, I was a kid. So for like 3 days, I thought I killed her until the coroner's report came out and found out she actually OD'd. And no, I did not kill Janis Joplin.
And here's the world-famous Whiskey A Go-Go on the Strip, a favorite dancing spot for both the mods and movie stars who want to get it on. Let's drop in and see what's happening tonight.
The Whiskey was pretty essential. It was one of the first great rock and roll clubs.
It's the old marquee in London. It's the CBGB of the West Coast. It's the place that you know everybody's gone through.
You thought it was this big, massive concert hall. You can't fit more than 200 people inside. It was just a regular bar with people, and yet anybody who was anybody played there.
A lot of great artists over the years, Led Zeppelin.
Buffalo Springfield was another big band. Fleetwood Mac was another big band. Alice Cooper, all these bands when they were nothing.
When you first start out and before you figure out your game, the Whiskey's the place to do it.
I cannot tell you how many thousands of people got started on the street.
Everybody, they've all done their first tour through the States in clubs. So they ended up in the Whiskey in LA.
The first time we ever played in Los Angeles was at the Whiskey, and there was like a line around the block twice.
We had opening nights probably 2 to 3 times a week with the major groups. And then you always had the house band, Chicago CTA at that time. They were like, I think, 7 guys living in a 1-bedroom apartment on Hollywood Boulevard.
We didn't have much of anything. I mean, we were just trying to survive. We all lived together in a little house on Holly Drive under the 101. And, coming to the Whiskey to work was a chance to make some dough, to feed ourselves, and to possibly get a connection to something even better.
We were opening for Velvet Underground. They were promoting their very famous first album with the Andy Warhol banana on the cover. And not only did we sort of become the house band, and that would be on the off nights, not the nights when the big names would come through. But we did get access to the club during the daytime.
We were in here rehearsing the music that was to become Chicago Transit Authority, the first album.
This was a sounding ground and a place for us to really write and arrange the music that put us on the map.
As I was walking down the street one day.
Next thing you know, we had record company executives in here and bidding wars were starting. And so we wound up inking a deal with Columbia Records. which started here.
West Hollywood's a popular part of LA. I mean, obviously you had Tower Records there, you had a lot of nightclubs around there, and it cemented itself even before the Whiskey as being sort of an entertainment strip.
You know, and this is the Whiskey and Sunset Strip in Hollywood. Palm trees, suntan chicks, and it was cool.
Sunset Boulevard was packed with people strolling. You know, it was like a party on the sidewalk.
Going to a concert was an event. It was the gathering of the tribes, and the streets were just filled with really interesting, attractive, glamorous people.
And you just hop from one club to the next, you know, passing joints and just, hey, brother, what's happening?
You could walk up the street and people would hand you a hit of acid.
Every night there was people on the street. The street was full of young people.
Just strolling up and down the street, you would meet movie stars, rock stars, everyone.
A wandering band of members of a so-called religious cult with a leader they call Jesus has had 3 of its followers arrested in the investigation of the murder of Sharon Tate and 6 others.
Charles Manson, the girl called me at home and says, there's a guy downstairs, we're closed. He won't get out, so I'll be right down there. So I drove down all the way from Canoe Park to the Whiskey, and I go downstairs and says, what are you doing here? He said, you know who I am? I stop him and I don't give a fuck who you are, okay? Now you gotta leave me, you don't, I'm gonna kick your ass. He says, I'm Jesus. I tell him, I'm God, motherfucker. Now get up in that chair. You got up, or I'd have had to beat the shit out of him, either one.
The Whiskey was a club where groups came to see other groups play. That was the changing time, and if you give credit to an individual, would be my dad. He literally came up, stood at the front door of the Rainbow, so the group started coming in here to hang out. The Rainbow was originally the Villanova, which was a famous restaurant in itself.
I was here with my parents when it was Villanova in the 50s.
It was loaded with movie stars. Marilyn Monroe dated Joe DiMaggio in that booth right behind us.
I was friends with Tony Curtis. I believe it was around the time that they were making Some Like It Hot that Marilyn Monroe and Tony Curtis would meet here at the Rainbow, then called the Villanova, and have the little liaisons. And then went out to the bungalows up by the ocean. She was cheating on Arthur Miller, her playwright husband. Arthur Miller found out, and he wanted to fight with him. And then it was either the director of Some Like It Hot broke it up, or Arthur Miller decided it wasn't worth fighting with him. Tony promised to stop the relationship with Marilyn Monroe, and they all agreed and shook hands, and that was the end of that.
The Whiskey was a place where groups came to see other groups. Now the groups are coming up to the Rainbow to hang out, to hang with one another. We had a private club upstairs called the Vampire's Lair.
The Hollywood Vampires thing, it was just a club of people that just all hung together. It was Mickey Dolings and Alice Cooper.
You had Ringo, John Lennon. These people hung in here all the time.
The Hollywood Vampires were me, Alice, Harry, Heath, and John Everett. That was kind of the core. Started hanging out up there. And, oh, I can't look. Shortly after it opened. We were kind of a drinking men's club, like you would have in England, you know, and call it the Friars or something. I think maybe it might have had something to do with the fact that this had such a cool, like, private. You know, it was tough enough to get downstairs, you know. And then to get up here, over the Rainbow, was like another level. And then to get up here was basically impossible unless you were one of those guys.
Every kind of act you could imagine, every kind of drug you could imagine, probably went through there. I'm not going to point fingers at anyone.
We were just smoking and drinking and laughing and puking. It's like, there probably wasn't a whole lot of people that even wanted to go up there. It's like all those weirdos. Contrary to a little bit of urban myth, Alice and I, we were into sports, and Harry was a basketball player. And Alice's idea was to start a softball team called the Hollywood Vampires. He got t-shirts made, and we would play these charity games, and we'd go out and raise money and stuff. Then we'd come here and get hammered. But the Rainbow is just a great restaurant, and it got to the point where it was probably one of the premier rock places along Sunset Strip.
The Rainbow became the home of the moving stars, where rock stars and musicians and the movie stars came to see one another, literally to be seen or to see who's here. It was more than instantaneous, it was kind of unbelievable.
I started to come here, the Rainbow, more than the whiskey, because this was a place to be. We get looking for chicks and parties.
Anybody who was in town, whether they were recording or playing a show, would come here.
This was the hub. Name acts would come to LA. They'd come here on a night off to see what was going on.
Bands were actually the innovators of all music.
I mean, in the 70s, you'd get people from Led Zeppelin.
The Who or the Stones.
Well, I met them all. I talked to them, give them booze, whatever they want. What's it, Jim Brown? Would go to other restaurants but here?
You never know who you were going to see.
Zeppelin would come in all the time. They put the big round table in the middle. They put it together. All the Zeppelin were there. Deep Purple would come in, The Who, and it was packed. It was absolutely packed, and it was really a really fun, different era.
And it's really a restaurant in a club.
I have a lot of memories of that kitchen. So busy all the time. Always having something to eat, even if you had no money. I mean, Mario was always, pay me later, you know, or whatever. I didn't hear anything.
It's not just the location of it, because it's right in the middle of everything, but the food's really good.
They have the best damn soups. The pizzas are notorious. What I always tell my friends is you get a Spago steak at a Rainbow price.
A steak, you've got to pay $60, $70 for a steak. I got the best steak in the city right here.
You feel sick, you gotta get some Rainbow chicken soup. It's the only way to cure your throat.
My name is Miguel Murillo, and I'm the chef at the Rainbow.
Miguel is a mainstay, without a doubt. He makes sure this place runs right.
I started working here April 1972. Started as a busboy. I'd never cooked before.
They used to clean toilets. Now he's a chef.
Miguel did the movie Up in Smoke. Cheech and Chong used to hang in here. In fact, Cheech married one of our
You
waitresses.
smoked this whole lid, man, and I haven't even got a buzz yet.
We had a French chef that we first opened the Rainbow with, and Miguel watched him prepare the food, and then with my mother's recipes, incorporated into it and developed the menu I have.
The consistency is unbelievable. Since I was a kid, it tastes exactly the same.
Miguel's been here 43 years. We have not one or two, but many long time employees. It's not unusual for someone to be here 25, 30 years.
The same chef and the same owner have been around for about at least 30 some odd years.
It's like, you know, go in the kitchen. It's like your house, you know?
I mean, I remember being there as a little kid running around. My whole childhood, my grandfather would work late night till 3 in the morning every night. My dad, same thing. As kids, we didn't go to bed till 2, 3 in the morning because it's just what our family was used to.
I made it a family. I want my family. What else you got in life? Nothing. I took care of my people that came in. Hello, how are you? How's your kids? How's your wife?
It's like that TV show Cheers. People like to go where everybody knows your name.
And to this day, we are now 43 years later, and they are still coming here on a regular basis. And you can come on a Monday or a Tuesday, which you wouldn't even expect it, and you may have 5 or 10 rock stars. Ozzy's here about 3-4 times a week. Lemmy from Motorhead bought a place right down the street so he would be near the Rainbow. Makes no bones about it. He has to be by the Rainbow.
Lemmy is a god. Lemmy is awesome. He's always been a part of this club. He loves hanging out at the Rainbow. He's always at the Rainbow.
He's like furniture there. He's always there.
People call and they think he owns the place, you know? I mean, I get all these calls, or what does Lemmy have to do with the Rainbow? It's like he just hangs out there.
Lemmy, he still comes here. Plays a machine on the bar, that's all he does. But he minds his own business, such a nice guy.
He's in front of the machine all the time, man, drinking his Jack and Cokes, and you don't bug him.
One of the coolest things about the Rainbow is celebrities like to hang out there because they don't get messed with. People who are famous can hang there and kind of sit in a corner and keep to themselves and not get fucked with by every person that walks by.
I came to the Rainbow the first time in '73, which was the year after it opened. And I've been here ever since, more or less. It's when I was in Auckland for an English band, you know. It was the only place I knew people. It was the best club in LA, so, you know. Any questions? Right?
What makes it the best?
The good manners of the staff, you know. They're cool, you know. And they were cool back then, too. I was completely unknown when I came over there, and they gave me a big hello, you know. They bought me Christmas dinner the first year I was there because it was my birthday, Christmas Eve. And it was really, very good people, tough people.
That guy helped me out in Vegas one time with another joint we had there. And Lemmy's a good man.
He's an amazing guy, he's a great person, and we all adore him.
It's just a great, old, traditional rock club. There's a lot of history. I mean, the Doors came here, you know, everybody came here. Everybody.
It was the kind of crowd that I liked. I wasn't really crazy about like the Sky Bar or the W. These places just struck me as a bit like pretentious, you know, leisure suit attitude, you know, sports jackets. So just, I don't know. This is rock and roll. This is rock and roll as it gets.
A rock star is a peculiar thing. It's come to mean you're extraordinary. You can be Bill Clinton, you're a rock star, or Obama, or whoever it is you think is cool. You can't say, see that guy over there? He's a hip-hop star. It fucking means nothing. That guy over there, he's a country star. Take your pick. That guy's a heavy metal star. It means fuck all. There is only rock. Because as much as we love Sinatra and the Rat Pack, it's not this thing. Mom and dad and outside culture didn't affect it. So people's hair grew longer, they wore more flamboyant clothes. Straight guys like Robert Plant were wearing chick clothing. And the sort of ambiguous nature of guys moving like girls and stuff, it was not judgment. In fact, I don't remember the word gay being uttered. You just did whatever you wanted to do. When people say, tell us a story, it doesn't have to be sexual. If it's rock and roll, it's always about sexual. If it's country music, it's about your beer and your truck or your hog or whatever. That's why we picked up guitars in the first place. What do you think? We have some great secret to impart to the world? I don't look like Bob Dylan. Nobody pretends to be that. We just wanted to get laid.
The Rainbow was really a place where rock and roll musicians could go and hang out and just be themselves and be able to, you know, have a good time, the kind of good time that a musician wants to have.
You know, the reputation was rock and roll, sex, drugs, rock and roll. People want to live a kind of a rock and roll gypsy lifestyle where you don't have to apologize. There was even a magazine called Star, and on the cover of every issue of Star were groupies who would tell their stories of bedding down Robert Plant or the Aerosmith guys or whoever. They were celebrated.
You get to fuck the prettiest boys, you get to smoke the best dope, you get to meet all the most far out people. It's magic.
You just had to be cool about it. That was the sort of fine line.
Once I finally got out of high school in 1978, my first thing to do was to pack up the car and come to Hollywood.
It was in the heart of the disco era. Rock was a secondary thing. The very first night I came out in '77, I came to the Rainbow. And then I came every night after that for years. There were all these guys waiting for a chance, going through different bands. I'm talking about me and Nikki Sixx and Blackie Lawless, and we were all hanging here wondering what was gonna happen to us.
It was like the unemployment place for bands, you know, when bands were looking for a break.
I was an aspiring rock and roll musician and hanging out at all the various clubs in LA, you know, sort of doing that thing that you do, which is going to check out bands, going to sort of network, so to speak.
You come here and you'd say, you know, looking for a bass player or a guitar player, and somebody would tell somebody and you get a phone call, you know.
I mean, all kinds of interesting stories about things that have developed at the Rainbow, from record deals to songs to bands, members of bands meeting. I mean, all kinds of, you name it, it's happened there.
I look on the walls now and I see so many bands that I either toured with or I knew from here, you know.
Rock music in the 80s all came out of the Rainbow and the Whiskey.
I was a stalwart at the Rainbow. I have a long history with Michael and Mario. I first met them, unbeknownst to them, probably when I was like 15. I used to make fake IDs and we go in there on the weekends. Michael was always hanging around the door. He finally busted me with my fake ID. And I'd gone down there with Steven, and he was using a fake ID I made for him. And he walked right in, and I got held up. I was drunk, too, and I was pissed. And I went back to my pad, and I went into my mom's clothes and shit, because it was Tuesday, it was ladies' night. So I went through a bunch of her shit, and I put together this makeshift female sort of getup and some makeup and stuff like that. I padded my chest up and did the whole nine and went back up there and got in. But then suddenly I realized the grim reality is that I'm dressed as a girl in the Rainbow. It did work, though. I got in.
Well, I would probably be breaking the law by saying the first time I was let in here. As a musician, you could live on a bowl of chicken soup and a loaf of bread, because they always gave you a loaf of bread, which was like the thing you fill up on, but then you get a little bit of nourishment with it. It was a big bowl, too.
There's so many that literally give credit to my dad because, yeah, he supported them while they were coming up, and he always took them under their wing. And if someone came in and they looked like they were down and out of their luck or trying to get started, my dad was always like, here, gotta feed you, have a bowl of soup.
I met Mario in the Runaways days. We had an apartment around the corner up here on Clark Street, and we would come to the Rainbow every night, and Mario would take care of us every night because we didn't have any money.
You know, in those days, I might have had enough for a beer, and Mario was always very, very cool about it. He'd hook me up with an extra, maybe even a refill. You know, I don't know why he was so sweet to me, but he was, and to this day, I always thank him for it.
Mario really gave us a place to put a roof over our heads. We were trying to be rock stars and learning and reaching out for different people to help us, and Mario was there. The Runaways had the largest attendance record in the history of the Whiskey A Go-Go that wrapped around the Rainbow 4 nights in a row.
Your grandpa let me in there and he'd buy me a meal when I didn't have any money. I've seriously heard that story from 1,000 different people.
That's me, that's my nature. I feel sorry for the guy down there, not the guy up there, the guy down here. You gotta treat everybody well, no matter who they are, no matter, except Madison. Nuts, that guy.
around that period that I came up to Hollywood, you know, that was the era of Van Halen. You know, Van Halen got signed out of the whiskey in the late 70s.
I got to see them do their first album at the Whiskey, and it was insane. I had never heard of them.
Me and my friends were all into Van Halen, and they were playing, they were doing some release party. So I come down as a little kid, and there's just thousands of people in the street. I mean, you've never seen so many people in your life, and they're all in front of the Whiskey trying to get into the Whiskey to see Van Halen. And then someone announces that the tickets are on sale at Tower Records down the street. So everyone runs from the Whiskey over to Tower Records trying to get their tickets, and then some fuck up happened over there. The tickets end up being sold here. Sold the 500 tickets in about 4 seconds, and it was just mayhem. I mean, the SWAT team, you know, the whole 9 yards was out here, like, protecting the Sunset Boulevard from this, like, potential riot from this Van Halen crowd. I went up to the Rainbow, just you know, say hi to my grandpa and stuff, and he made me walk Weird Al Yankovic into the show. So, you know, I got to go see Van Halen with Weird Al. And I mean, it was the coolest night ever.
When we saw Van Halen take off, and it was a local band, and everybody was aware of who they were and how good they were, we knew a door had flung open on that.
In the 80s coming on, it was like these hair metal bands were everywhere around there.
I've seen a lot of bands at the Whiskey, but one of the important gigs for as far as the Whiskey and LA and all that was I saw Motley Crue there.
Motley Crue, this leather and chain-clad band, pushed their way up through the LA club circuit just 2 years ago. Now with the release of their second album, Shout at the Devil, Motley Crue has them waiting around the block for hours in the cold and rain.
A lot of us got record deals. White Riot, Motley, Wasp, Rat, Dokken. And that's when we really took over the Strip. It was just crazy here. From right here to the Rainbow down to the edge of the Whiskey Corner, it was just packed.
Get set for 3 hours of the loudest, rudest, crudest, heaviest, meanest music around. It's time for the Headbangers Ball!
It was just total domination. On TV, radio, concerts, everything was dominated from the bands that came from this strip right here.
I think Poison are fucking great!
And there was so many signed bands living here and all friends. So it was a real community and a really cool scene. It was signed with Wasp for 4 years, all the way up to like about 87. We were all touring so much, we weren't even aware that there was a second wave of metal coming out of LA.
How the fuck are you doing that? Is it fucking hot in this fucking place? Been a long time.
It was approximately 1 year ago that an LA club band, hoping to gain recognition, released their first album, Appetite for Destruction.
They say the Stones to the 60s were the kings of their genre. They say Aerosmith in the 70s was the same thing. They say in the late 80s going into the 90s, it is Guns N' Roses.
It was this Guns N' Roses, LA Guns, Faster Pussycat thing happening, and the whole city was buzzing. And I was fortunate. I got right out of Wasp and right into LA Guns. I just watched that whole thing, that whole second wave take over too, especially GNR, how big they got.
Axl Rose, he came on stage and he started talking. He says, we've played this town in Florida, and the mayor said we'll never play there again. Well, he can suck my dick. He grabbed his privates.
One of my biggest shows as a kid was Guns N' Roses and Metallica at the Rose Bowl. And I run into my grandpa at like 12 years old. He's like, what the fuck are you doing here? Like with the last person you'd think to run into at a venue that holds 100,000 people is your grandfather. But that happened.
What was he doing there?
He's hanging out. They invited him down. He was there, you know, he had his laminate on, you know, he's going backstage. I was trying to go to the bathroom, and I ran right into him.
Guns N' Roses was a good show, good group. I liked them. I still like them.
In the early days of Guns N' Roses, we used to hang out at the Rainbow all the time.
When I joined Guns N' Roses, we always came back here. You know, we had our booth, which was the corner booth, and Slash's name is on that booth. We all sat there, but he claimed it.
You know, the booth thing is just something that materialized. I don't even know if it was intentional. They just put this one picture of me in the back booth, and that sort of just turned into like Slash's booth somehow. They probably thought maybe, you know, with all those pieces and stuff, maybe it's time to give him some sort of a booth, you know.
We always felt protected in our booth, and people didn't really bother us because this was our place. And Mario and the guys and Mike would say, hey, this is your home. You can do whatever you want here. You want to film a video, do it. There was no contracts or asking for money or any of that bullshit. First video that I performed in with Guns N' Roses, we shot that right here at the Roxy with Arnold. But we all sat in here waiting for the scenes to come up because, you know, as we know, filming stuff, you gotta set cameras and lights. Arnold had a trailer that was parked in the parking lot. We'd all go over there, and I remember we went in there and he was smoking cigars and drinking Goldschlager. And we all did shots with him. So by the time we shot the last scene where Arnold comes out of the Roxy and we're all standing in a line where it's Slash, me, Duff, Dizzy, and Axl, we'd been in here for about 4 hours drinking heavily. So by the time we got to the film set, if you watch, we're very wobbly on that last scene, especially Slash. You know, we shot many videos here.
We shot part of a video called Estranged, which is one of a 3-part epic video series that Guns N' Roses did.
I remember going to that, and that was just amazing to see a video being filmed at our club.
And then I gave them a guitar that I threw off a cliff for the Don't Cry video. That was a good Les Paul, too. It went neck first off this cliff, and it came back in 3 pieces, and we sort of tied it back together.
We don't buy any of this memorabilia or the guitars and things. They're given to us regularly. Phil Campbell from Motorhead gave me the one that's over my head somewhere here. That's like a $5,000 guitar, but he wanted to be in the Rainbow.
We got Eddie Van Halen's guitar up there, got tons of drum heads, I mean, all sorts of cool memorabilia.
And all the pictures on the walls of all the famous rock stars that have been here, or giving them their gold albums.
There's a little bit of a museum, you know? It's like, you know, we're like the real hard rock cafe, you know?
The story I heard is that the guys that started hard rock got the idea from the Rainbow. I would not be surprised.
So Mario, you know, I brought him one of my Guns N' Roses snare drums, which was like a signature series drum that he made for me. And says to Mario and the Rainbow, Matt Sorum, Guns and fucking Roses. And Mario says, Matt, what's with the language? You know, I don't like it when you cuss. You know, I'm like, Mario, I mean, we're in the Rainbow. I mean, really? He takes a piece of tape and he covers up the fucking. He thought that I should be respectful of what's on the wall, and not everybody wants to see the word fucking, okay? So, still up there, and it's still got that old piece of tape from over 20 years ago.
Are you still doing rock and roll? One of the few heavy metal comedians around.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun with it.
I was good friends with Sam Kinison, who came to the Rainbow all the time. And we used to come here, and the funny thing is that Sam would often drink, and yet we would be called upon to help walk some of the rock stars out the door. Like Ozzy Osbourne, he'd get a little tipsy.
No one was gonna near me because I was fucking crazy all the time. I was like stoned out my face with it.
And then me and Sam Kinison would walk him out to the car.
I always remember coming, but I could never remember getting home. I don't think I ever walked out of here.
And it was an honor. Here I am with a legend like this, and I'm helping him walk to his car, hooking up under his arm, and
Oh, thank you, Ron. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sam.
And then, of course, me and Bill used to help Sam Kinison get to his car. He had this great car. It was a Corvette, said ex-Rev, because Sam was a Pentecostal minister in a former life. Nobody ever helped me out the door, and I'm kind of jealous.
What was Ozzy like?
Oh, Ozzy's great. He's so funny. He's so mellow. You know, I was expecting, oh, you got any pets on you? Hurrah, you. Trying to get some raw meat, you know. And he's not like that at all. He's so kind, you know. He's so British and kind. Hello, how are you? I've always been afraid to meet you. That's what he told me. I'm afraid to meet you because I heard you were too wild for me to hang out with. Now, I'm going, yeah, great. Ozzy Osbourne's afraid to meet me?
One time I remember being over there was, in that booth at the back there was Sam Kinison, the comedian, and Stevie Marriott from Humble Pie. Stevie went home the following day and burned himself to death. And Sam got in a car accident and gone away to Vegas. I stopped coming after a while because Sharon was trying to curb my bad ways. She said to me, don't go down there, because I'd come here, I wouldn't go home for a week. I haven't been here in the evening for a long, long time. I've come here in the day to see a few friends of mine, but I've got in bed by 11 o'clock every night now. You gotta understand, when I came in here, by an hour later, I was off it. If I'd have kept coming, I would have been dead long ago.
I can't tell you how many people that my father has lectured on their drug issues, of using drugs. He will turn to customers here that are regular drinkers, still to this day, and say, you drink too much. We sell drinks for a living, okay? He will sit down and tell them they drink too much.
There's a few characters like that in town who cared about the people that frequented their establishments. That wasn't uncommon. It is now. Mario's an exception. That's why I didn't care so much when my daughter, Amy, would come around, because I knew that there was this protective, almost, family thing.
When I got some success, I remember my drinking get a little out of control, because now I had money to buy beers and buy beers for my friends and, you know, do some shots too. And I remember Mario pulling me aside one night, and he literally gave me that fatherly talk, because my dad wasn't around up here in Hollywood. I was a kid running around on my own, you know? And he said, man, I don't like how you're acting, kid. You're drinking too much. And I was like, oh, come on, Mario. No, listen to me. I'm telling you, you're drinking too much. Simmer down. And, you know, that really stuck with me, you know, because he was like a father figure to a lot of us who had come to Hollywood, you know, looking for the dream. And we were away from family and any sort of grounding, you know.
Over the years, you know, I had different issues. Mario had taken care of me a few times. He definitely saw where I was at, and he did give me sort of a speech as to, yeah, what the fuck am I doing, and why would I, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, and I listened to him within reason. You know, I took it to heart.
The grunge era came in the 90s. It cut down everybody on the streets, you know, it wasn't craziness out on the streets in the 90s.
Because it is more overcast here, we don't spend 300 days a year playing volleyball like they do down in California. You tend to spend more time indoors, whether reading a book or seeing films or practicing music in your garage.
Musical tastes changed. The glamorous part of the scene came and went. Once the guys start cutting their hair and look like, let me see, are you a Domino's pizza delivery boy, or you work for the sanitation department, or are you in the band? You're done.
As far as the flow when it comes to the Rainbow, it kept a consistent thing.
The Rainbow was still kind of catering to the 80s people. You know, the Rainbow kind of kept that rock and roll, that old, 80s rock feel alive.
But as far as the whiskey, it definitely affected the business. The economy changed, and when the economy changed, the industry changed. You had the record companies that backed every group. When we threw a party at the whiskey, you had Capitol, you had Atlantic, you had all these major companies that literally came behind the groups and backed them up. The record companies, they weren't throwing out several $1,000s a night to promote a new group that was coming out.
And back in the late 90s, when the record sales started to drop and music became free, the band stopped making money, so the band stopped touring. That's when it got bad, and that was my generation.
Money got tight. There were times that it was strained.
My grandpa got real sick. He had cancer, and they had to take him for chemotherapy.
Had a very rare type of cancer that was in his face. They actually had to remove his nose at one point. He had a 10% survival rate. Well, he beat that. He was tough.
And my dad was by his side. So basically my dad and my grandpa, for a long time, were just non-existent.
When it comes to my son, at first it was like, you have to cover the business, you run the weekends and answer the phones. And I'm actually quite amazed that he picked everything up just like that. Within 2 years, all of a sudden, he's booking groups.
I've been around it my whole life, so it was just natural. I just took over and started doing everything. No matter what was going on in our personal life, no matter what was going on at home, it was like I couldn't let that affect business. Like, the business needs to go on. This is what we live off of. The show must go on, literally. I started off, I did all System of a Down's first shows here, all Hoobastank's first shows. I was booking Hoobastank for 10 years before they got a record deal. Linkin Park booked those guys for years. We did Eminem's first LA show. We heard about this white rapper, Eminem, and it was all the big rage, and he wanted $1,500, and we were like, wow, that's a lot, but we'll give it a shot. That show was the first show that Dr. Dre saw him, and that's when he got signed, right after that show. Anything out of that later 90s, early 2000s generation, we helped out and, we booked all their shows and then started them from the ground up.
My grandson, thank God he came along. If it wasn't for him, forget about it. It wouldn't happen.
I'm very proud of the fact that my son was able to take over. This kid was born with a silver spoon or gold spoon in his mouth, doesn't have to work, didn't have to do anything, and he gets out there and works as hard, if not harder, than I worked, day and night. So, and that brought a joy to my father. That was his pride, was his grandson.
He keeps that place open 7 days a week. We used to open maybe 3-4 days a week. Well, he knows the music better than my son, probably better than me. He's a booker, that's what he does.
To me, it was never about the partying or about the fun. Like, I'm just a music freak. I love music, I love concerts.
And now he runs the whole show over there. He runs it all for us.
I don't really have an actual position at either place. I'm just the boss.
I rarely will walk into the whiskey, and be quite honest with you, I'm at an age now where I can't stand the noise.
I've had some pretty crazy shows. I've had some shows that get pretty violent. It just depends on the crowd. I had a friend over at Tang Records, and he's like, oh, let's put these British bands, like really just like oi type punk rock bands. And I mean, this place just broke out into a riot. There was like skinheads and the non-skinheads, and they're fighting. I mean, you had every type of bad person in the punk rock scene all at one place at one time, literally just fighting. And somehow a gunshot went off and the place was berserk, and SWAT team, the barricades, the whole 9 yards. I mean, it was insane. Another one, it was like a hardcore show, like a pretty rough crowd. These thugs came in and started a big fight. There's trash cans getting thrown. There's people getting the shit kicked out of them. We had it to the point where all the security guards were inside the club and the maniacs were outside. My sister's husband was just hired as a security guard here. He doesn't really know how to deal with these situations. He goes outside, the second he walks out there, he gets clipped in the jaw. And I mean, there's just blood gushing everywhere. So we go out to help him. He goes around the side trying to help somebody else and gets hit again. fully destroyed his jaw, like broken every little piece of his jaw, and that was his last day of security.
What's he do now? I gotta ask.
He sells real estate. You know, it's a lot calmer of a job.
This is tradition at its core, you know? And thank God, because I'd hate it to fall into somebody else's hands.
And they're already trying to buy it to put up another fucking hotel, you know, like we need another hotel on the Strip.
Sunset Strip, as we know it, is being stripped away a little bit.
You can find construction going up everywhere on the Strip. Developers buying old buildings to replace them with luxury hotels.
It's like you blink, you know, and it's completely different, you know. Like when Tower Records went, for instance.
It's a pity they knocked Gazaris down and made it into the Key Club, you know, and now it's something, what was it, Oak Tree, Oak One or something. Bullshit, you know, it should be Gazaris. They should have had Bill Gazzari stuffed him in the lobby with his arm around two young stuffed shits.
It's getting more touristy, which is kind of not my scene anymore.
The Rainbow hasn't changed at all.
I came back to Los Angeles, and I remember walking into the Rainbow after not seeing it for 15 years and going, it hasn't fucking changed.
They've always seemed to keep the integrity of the club intact.
It's so real, and it has been. I don't know how they do it.
It goes back to the atmosphere. You keep that comfortable atmosphere. This is still the basic decor that you see around here from the old Villanova. Finish the booths or redo the tops of the tables, but we have to keep it looking the same. If we change it, my father taught me that, if you change it, you'll change the face of the business. And so people today are still comfortable being here.
We want people to feel like they're in rock and roll. Now we have a whole revitalization of the 80s rock movement, and I love the fact that you can go to the Rainbow, feel the rock vibe, come to the Whiskey and see Dawkins or see Warrant still in this day. That's what we're going for. I'm not really a fan of music of today and where music's going.
It's like a music factory now. It's like music more than music.
Technology is the new crack of music. It's too easy to press a button and sound better than you normally do. So almost everybody that gets up on stage, talking about big bands, are not playing live.
It really isn't this thing of wanting to learn how to play a guitar, wanting to master drums, wanting to play bass or sing.
You say to bands now, do you want to jam? They go, what's that mean?
You know, it's part and parcel of the digital age and also the way the record companies have decided the direction that they've gone. But I think that the magic that you hear on a record comes from really people interacting in the same room. It's not something that you can do from different people's living rooms from a distance. Having outlets, you know, venues for young bands to get together and do their thing is essential, especially for discovering music. And I mean, that's an art that is close to dead.
I think it's a shame. It makes it really difficult for new young acts and artists to get a foot in the door.
The music business itself is not catering to rock and roll at all.
I miss those times.
You know, as far as rock is concerned, it's not viable to make music.
Here, I'll play a game with you and see if you can answer this question. From 1958 until 1988, name 100 classic, iconic bands that will stand the test of time. Well, let me see, I've got Elvis, the Beatles, Stones, Led Zeppelin, Hendrix. In pop and R&B and stuff, you got the Jackson 5, Michael Jackson, Madonna, even disco, Donna Summer, it's on that level. Motown, the Supremes, it all happened at the same time. Okay, from 1988 until today, give give me 5 bands that will stand the test of time. It's not on that level.
Good evening. Thanks very much for joining us. The breaking news tonight is sad. A founding member of one of the most popular music acts of all time has died. Just 67 years old, and he was, quite simply, a rock star.
The rock legend David Bowie has died. He was 69 years of age.
Tributes from around the world this morning for Tom Petty, who died overnight at the age of 66. The legendary rock...
The musician Prince has died at his home in Minneapolis. He was 57 and had been struck.
Paul Kattner, a giant of the 60s music scene, has died. He was 70.
Ian Lemmy Kilmister, the frontman for the heavy metal band Motorhead, has died at the age of 70 after he...
Sunset Strip rock club owner Mario Maglieri has died at the age of 93.
That day, I was in such a state of shock. There was, just people on top of people and literally in a state of shock.
He was the godfather, he was the icon, and nobody could ever take his place. He was my hero, my hero.
He gave us this block of rock and roll. I don't know where we would be without it.
An era is gone. But Michael will carry on and he will become an icon too, I think. And Mikey, the grandson, he's just amazing.
I think my son is the future of the club, and he's done a tremendous job of carrying on that generational thing. My 2 daughters, they keep it strong, keep it alive. We're a very close-knit family. She lives across the hall.
She works out the whiskey.
She works at the whiskey.
I worked here for many years.
You're still part of the employees. Now I have a grandson. I have another generation that'll come into it, and hopefully he'll be the next one to come through.
I got a daughter. We're good.
The premise of rock and roll and the understanding of what the word really means. Icons, which, yeah, eventually will we lose these icons? Are they making any new ones? And I think that's what Michael Jr. has holding in his hands. What kind of entertainment is he going to bring to Sunset Boulevard that's going to say that's the next big thing? Where's the next Guns N' Roses? Because if you look at Guns N' Roses, it wasn't just a band. It was a cultural shift of music, fashion, style, the sense of being who you were as an individual. Like The Doors, like Van Halen, like any other band that came out of the Sunset Strip. The one great thing that I learned through rock and roll is that something big will happen where everyone, all of a sudden, you're stopping your tracks, you go, holy shit. Something is exploding. So if you're a rock and roll musician and you know the history of rock and roll, you know that rock and roll will never die.
The rainbow is a rite of passage for the world of rock and roll. This is the Strip. This is the home of rock and roll.
I hate for that place to go, just sort of kill what's left of a really iconic chapter in music history.
I've had some great memorable times here. I hope the rainbow's here for another 500 years.
My name is Lindsay Paragraph. I'm a member of the West Hollywood City Council.
We just want to thank the Maglieri family for all that you've shared with us in helping to build our community. So therefore be it resolved that the City Council of West Hollywood hereby recognizes the outstanding life and contributions of Mario Maglieri, who will be greatly missed.
This thing, this small little place, just serves burgers and beer and booze and stuff. But both whiskey and the Rainbow mean buckets full for the culture.
This place still breaks records. People from all over the world coming here just to see it. Major, major artists, major, major movie stars still come through here on a regular basis.
I don't think rock will ever die. I don't think the music will ever die. So the Rainbow and the Strip will be here forever, as far as I'm concerned.
It's not the biggest place, but it is the place.
For me, it was the greatest time of my life. Rock and roll is about celebrating life.
I want it to be here, that's all. If it's here, it'll be fine. It's been my bar, you know.
I want that feeling to continue on. I want them all to feel like they would always come back. This is their home. It's gonna stay, and it is the history of the Sunset Strip.
This classical period where possibly the best records of all time were made.
Being in the atmosphere of Hollywood and the creativity of that era, it was just the coolest feeling and vibe that I ever experienced. The idea of pursuing your dreams and that energy. And I really believe that the Rainbow is that vortex for that energy.
This is the history. These are your roots. The next kid can come in here and some old guy like me can sit him down and say, listen, kid, once upon a time, there was a special place. It was called the Rainbow.